Welcome back, everybody, to another podcast that talks all about the sport of triathlon. That podcast is, of course, Talking Triathlon. You know, because you are listening to it. My name is Tim Ford, and I'm joined by another guy who sometimes talks about triathlon. In fact, based on what he messaged me this morning, he might start talking a bit more about triathlon in his personal life.
Maybe a little bit more. Maybe a
James
little bit
Bale.
more.
Jimbo, welcome back.
How you doing, mate? How you
Yep,
doing?
very well, thank you. I have got a weird sort of husky little, I've got a bit of hay fever this morning, which is
Hay fever.
a little bit of hay fever, which is setting off my asthma a little bit. So I sound like I'm wheezing. I'm not. I'm all good. Everything is fine. But no, good mate. Yourself, you are in Francais in the what
I
is
am. I'm in
currently
France.
the home of triathlon. I think we can say with the current IronMan world champion and current WTCS men's world champions, and actually ITU long distance world champion. Mate, France is killing it at the moment in triathlon.
France is killing it. It has been for a while. I mean, threatening to for some time, hasn't it? It's been
Mm.
emerging sort of slowly but silently. So yeah. Yeah, France is good, man. It's nicer than being in the UK, which is a bit of a nationalist hellhole right now. So it's good to be out of there for a little bit.
As you pointed out to me, mate, you need to be careful because a very large contingent of our listeners from the UK.
Yeah, yeah. No, don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. I still spend the majority of my time in Devon, and
No,
I do love it there.
I'm Australian. Fuck the UK. I can say that and get away with it. Not really. I actually quite like the UK. Norwich surprised me. I went to Norwich last year to visit Joe, and so many people when I was like, "I'm going to Norwich," they're like, "Why?" Like that.
Did you
I'm not.
find it too flat? Didn't you find it too? Norwich is pretty, but it is
Yeah.
very flat. Disconcertingly flat.
I mean, I don't. I wasn't on a bike. I was there for like 2 days. I did some running, but I didn't do any bike running. But no, I didn't even notice. But no, it was quite an I was very, very pleasantly surprised by Norwich. Again, I think everybody was like, why the fuck are you going to Norwich? It was great. I would happily go back to Norwich.
That's
Uh
where JJ Jefferson lives, mate. He lives a couple of streets away from Joe. If I'd
really?
known you were going to be there with a bit of notice, I'd have come and stayed with him. We could have had dinner or something.
There you go. Because we are actually yet, I don't think we've ever met in the UK. I don't
We have
think.
not met in the UK, no.
This year. This year we'll have to do it around Super League.
This year's the year. T100 London, mate. You got to be there. Are you going to be there?
I don't know actually. The dates are probably not actually. I think the dates there's a clash, right? Or it's early. When is it? June? July?
June, I think.
No,
July, maybe. I don't know.
I'm
One of
probably not.
those two.
If it's around the Olympics, maybe because I'm going to be in Paris for the
Oh, I think it's the
Olympics.
weekend after the Olympics.
Like as in after the
So
triathlon, or
after the triathlon, yeah. So it might be a bit tight.
yeah, I don't think because I think that's the week we're doing an event at the Olympics this year, and I got to be there. God, man, just so hard. Yeah, okay, if I have to go to the Olympics for work, I think I can manage that. But the France thing, just because of the Olympics with triathlon, honestly, I don't think there's a safer bet at the moment in triathlon than France for the mixed team relay. What do you reckon? Again, maybe your
Yeah.
nationalistic pride will come out, but
Yeah, no, I mean, look, I mean, as you know, I haven't really, the way I support sport isn't really through a national lens. I just enjoy watching a good game of something or a good race or something. Apart from when I'm watching rugby, I'm a little bit England biased when I'm watching rugby. But yeah, I got a feeling France in the mixed team relay are going to be almost unbeatable in this Paris Olympics, don't you think? Because
they've
they're
got yeah.
strong. They're a strong team. And then couple that with France is a very proud, um, patriotic country. And I think the Olympics being in Paris will put a rocket up their ass somewhat.
It's interesting because we know that Dorian Connox has confirmed his position on the men's team. I thought Pierre Lecour had met the criteria, but I've heard that he actually hasn't, which means there are still two slots open for the French. You got three. It's this age-old problem, and this is probably something we're going to talk a little bit later about in the episode. But it means you got Vincent Louis, Pierre Lecour, and Leo Berger all competing for those two spots. And I mean, on paper, right, based on history, you'd have to say Vincent Louis is not going to the Olympics. However,
Mm,
it's Vincent Louis, right?
yeah.
When you consider that an injury-free Vincent Louis is possibly the best at that mixed team relay, like that super short, he is the best super sprint, we'll
Yeah,
call
that's the
athlete.
thing. And he's always had that sprint distance sort of domination, hasn't he?
Yeah.
There've been moments where people have put him as the favorite for an Olympic distance, and I've kind of always pushed back on that a little bit and been like, nah, he's more of a sprint athlete. And in that mixed team relay environment, not only is he great at that distance, but he's got a racing brain.
Well, you look at him, he seems to be a bit more of that. I mean, not obviously not fast twitch because he's a triathlete, but he's a very muscular, like he's a little guy, but he's
Mm.
very, very muscular. And yeah, I mean, I am very,
He's littler than he seems on TV. I've said this before years ago on the podcast, but he's
he's,
littler than you watch him on TV. He looks like, because compared to everyone else, he's got some muscle and he's a bit more lean muscle mass, maybe. But if you meet him in person, he's tiny, fucking tiny,
yeah,
man.
he's very, but it's funny. I'm always a bit cautious with you with this because before the first time I met Joe, which was at Sub 7, I mean, obviously we knew each other, but met in person. I sort of had a chat and you're like, mate, Joe's pretty little. And I had this, I think because we'd spoken about Vincent Louis and I'd met Vincent Louis, I expected Joe to be like this little guy. And Joe's the same height as me. Like Joe's basically the same size as me. And I went, I mean, I'm taller than you, James. Why are you saying Joe's little?
I can't remember saying Joe's little.
Well, there you go. This podcast is obviously Talking Triathlon. If you enjoy the podcast, you want to get more of the podcast, head to patreon.com/Talking Triathlon. $5 a month gets you access to bonus monthly episodes. We did ours. Oh, actually, we have to do another one. It's February. We have to do another one this month. God knows what we'll talk about. We actually had to take one of the episodes down recently because it was a bit too juicy. But there's still plenty of other ones up there available. Yeah, like I said, supports us. It's what we do. We appreciate it. Got a WhatsApp group, Facebook group. That stuff out of the way, Jimbo. It is one of our episodes where we just wrap up what has been happening, what is going to happen, and all the things we want to discuss in the world of triathlon. And I thought a good place to start will be a little seed that I dropped last week, where I saw that tweet or that article that Tri 24/7 put up, and they were talking with Alistair Brownlee off the back of the T100 series announcement, where we saw 20 men and 20 women get contracts, and he made the comment that he believes that World Triathlon in their championship series should follow a similar path, offer 20 men and 20 women the opportunity to race the WTCS. I put out a tweet about it this week on the Talking Triathlon Twitter account. From when I last saw it, a lot of people did not agree. A lot of people were saying no. But I thought it's an interesting conversation, and people will be aware that I have been somewhat critical, very critical of World Triathlon, probably the last 6 months. My views have not changed, but I thought it is an interesting conversation where we can sort of look at that as a starting point and talk a bit about how or what we think World Triathlon can and need to do to improve things. And I'm not necessarily talking from like a governance point of view. I don't want to get into the nitty gritty of that shit, but I think more about their responsibility or their management of the main short course format of the sport. So to start with, 20 athletes at a WTCS event. What do you reckon, James Bale?
Yeah, I mean, I've been thinking about this since you mentioned it at the end of last week. And I mean, World Triathlon, WTCS, is a very clunky organization. It's big, it's bloated, it's, and I think slimming that down to a field of 20 would be a very solid step in the direction of streamlining what is quite a confusing sport to follow. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's kind of, it's not like watching a football season or watching a Formula One season. It's as a fan coming in, you have to have a certain depth of knowledge before you can casually watch it and understand the season long narrative. You can watch a race for what a race is, and that all-encompassing bubble that a race weekend is, and watch that one race and say, well, that person won. That was quite an exciting experience. But you won't take it if you don't have an understanding of the sport or any depth of knowledge at all. You don't take anything away from that and think, well, what's going to happen for the rest? Who's fighting for whatever the ultimate prize is this year? And I think if you slimmed it down to a field of 20, kept the same athletes contracted for the whole year, had a race series which they had to race certain races, you're starting to move in the direction of a closed series that actually would create a season-long narrative that people could follow.
See, straight away, I hear and I agree everything you're saying, but I'm thinking, I feel like we had this conversation 12 months ago about what the PTO should do. And I really like that we've seen them take those steps. But the story is the same. I do. I think this is what exactly like the PTO. I think every point you've made is the exact reason why World Triathlon should adopt this. I mean, a simple example, the biggest World Triathlon event of last year is the grand final, let's say, or arguably the Paris Test event, the grand final. Who came 25th? Fuck, I don't know. Who came 40th? I don't know. I don't know. I couldn't tell you where majority of people probably outside the top five came at a lot of, I couldn't tell you who they were, to be honest. And I think this is the thing I'm noticing with a lot of triathlon. It's the same with the PTO Tour race. I couldn't tell you who came 15th in Singapore. I couldn't tell you who came 12th in Milwaukee. I can tell you who was the top 10. I feel like there is this conflict with World Triathlon between trying to be the main format of racing for the sport, as well as being well, we need to, this is how people qualify for the Olympics. And the Olympic qualification is a fucking nightmare. Like
Mm.
anybody who says they understand how that works is a liar, because it feels like every time you think you've understood it, like I said, the Pierre Lecour thing, I think he thought he'd qualified. Everybody thought he'd qualified. No, he hadn't. And there's too much discretion and things like that. Like I feel like that's probably why. I mean, they have 50 slots, right? Because they want to give all the athletes the opportunity to earn points, and the federations, to have their people get their jobs and stuff. But I feel like World Triathlon, well, again, I'm not trying to be biased here. I'm just trying to actually give what I think is the truth. There needs to be more of a focus on doing what the other organizations are doing and realizing that this is a broadcastable sport. They're the only version of triathlon that charges a fee to watch their races. Yet it is the worst version of racing to watch. The contradiction of that is fucking astounding to me, to be honest. You have to pay. It's terrible. It's boring. It's complicated. You're not going to enjoy it, but you have to pay to watch it, and you should be
Yeah, yeah.
grateful.
Not only is the Olympic qualification complicated, but the actual season-long narrative is complicated. Trying to understand where people are earning their points, what points they'll get for certain levels of races they're racing. Even the points accumulation is
Yeah,
more complicated than it should be, and people end up with thousands of points. Fucking simplify it.
yeah. Think about
I
think
mean,
about
you
the
don't
well,
see
think
a
about
Formula One driver with thousands of points and then
Max Verstappen maybe.
yeah, Max
Fuck
Verstappen
Max
maybe.
Verstappen. But think about, like, even your point is exactly correct. You watch the grand final and you can hear the commentators saying, well, if this person is this place and then this person doesn't come here, and if this happens and then this and then this, and you're going, what the fuck? Like, do you remember, was it last year? Not last year, before. Hayden could win the thing if Alex came less than fourth, but Hayden had to become, was it like above seventh? And then as long as this person didn't win, and you have Hayden running, and again, it was exciting, but in terms of like understanding the narrative, it made no fucking sense, because off camera, Matt Hauser passes Hayden. So suddenly Hayden is no longer able to win the thing. We miss it. And then it's this, like, he wins and you go, what's happened? What's going on? What, like, it's too complicated.
Mm.
It's way too and then you layer on the fact that people need the points for rankings, because you need to be ranked in the top 80, I think, to be eligible for a WTCS start. Then there's wildcards, and then you've got some of the big name athletes through injury or whatever who will go to events, who will pay for themselves to travel to an event like Abu Dhabi or Cagliari or Yokohama. Gwen Jorgensen being a perfect example. How many events did she travel to last year without a race entry on a wait list? Um, oh my God, I'm having a blank right now. The American, huge fan, great runner. Morgan Pearson went to, what was the event that he went to without a start, ended up qualifying for the Olympics because he,
Yeah, yeah.
like this sort of stuff is ridiculous. I
It
feel like
is.
the point I was trying to make is World Triathlon needs to obviously they have their responsibility as the governing body of the sport, but whoever runs the actual WTCS series, and I assume it's a department in World Triathlon, they need to start thinking of this as a product first. We need to make this.
Especially if you're gonna sell it. If people are having to pay as fans to watch the sport, and you're paying a monthly subscription to Triathlon Live, or an annual subscription, or whatever it is now. I think I still use Hayden's log on, to be honest, so I haven't paid for a
Do you
while.
reckon he pays?
But
Do you reckon they just give it to Hayden for
I've
free?
got no idea.
Hayden Wilde,
Um,
surely, mate. Surely you know somebody who knows somebody. Be like, just Hayden, you need to make a call, and you need to listen, James Bale, big deal in triathlon, sexiest voice. He needs a login. He's been stealing mine for, well, not that, main fuck, let's be honest. It's not like Hayden's, why does Hayden need it? He's racing.
I
He
don't,
doesn't.
yeah, I don't know. He doesn't need to watch it, does he? Anyway, so you've got all that. You've got the complications of things. If you slimmed it down to 20 athletes from around the world, you would have this sort of constant, you'd create a narrative instantly because you'd have the same names racing the same races all the time, and that would be fun. Then you're looking at it from a tangible impact on the actual race dynamic perspective as well. Because not only has it got the sort of more what's the
Ethereal,
word?
ethereal.
Yeah, ethereal sort of implications, but it's also got tangible race implications because you're going to have smaller fields. You're going to have much less drafting, much less ability to draft. You're going to have
Yeah,
much more
fuck yeah.
interesting race dynamics as that race unfolds because you're not going to see a bulk of people coming out the swim together, a bulk of people going on the bike together, and it comes down to a running race at the end, which is what we're beginning to see a bit more frequently now.
I also think that if you have a smaller field size, suddenly it means you can be more dynamic with the courses too, because you're not having to build a course that has to have 50 athletes on it or 80 athletes or however many it is. You have a field that has 20 athletes, and you see more of a Super League style because Super League's 20 athletes or around 20 athletes. And I've never watched a Super League race and thought, you know what's missing? You know what? There's something just not quite. There's not enough
Fucking loads more
athletes.
people.
There's not enough
Yeah.
athletes on this. So like that's the thing. I think it works. But yeah, we could actually start to see maybe some more technical courses, because the courses are fucking shit, mate. So maybe
Yeah.
with a smaller field size, because I think
The
that's the thing,
causes
right?
is causes shit, and the broadcast is also pretty fucking poor and
Yeah,
very, very changeable.
mm.
You
Not
don't even get a
consistent.
consistent level of poor. You get sometimes it's a bit better, sometimes it's a lot worse kind of thing. There is no average sort of consistency basis there. Now, the question I've got for you
Yeah,
is WTC, they're very good at not listening to people.
yeah, that's true.
They're one of these organizations that have a very sort of they're a bit like Iron Man in the fact that they don't really need to listen to anybody because they've got their power base. Do you think that someone with a voice like Alistair Brownlee, when he says something like that, has got the ability to make an organization like that listen?
I do. I actually think of anybody currently in the sport, it is Alistair Brownlee who can say it, and maybe, I mean, there's a number of factors, right? Firstly, two-time Olympic champion, the greatest to ever do short course distance racing ever. I'll argue that till I die. Uh, doesn't do it anymore. Isn't necessarily governed or like in the pocket of World Triathlon or British Triathlon that much anymore. I also, again, I see, I think Alistair Brownlee will be the head of World Triathlon at some point. Like I can just see that being his part. Extremely smart guy. Yeah, I think he is the sort of person that can say something and maybe make a difference. Will it happen now? Absolutely not. All they care about is Paris. They're thick in it. They think they're on top of the world. There's this hubris I see a lot with World Triathlon that they're not going to. But I mean, at some point, right? And this is what I've sort of touched on with a lot of the guests I've had on. There's a lot of short course athletes are asking about the PTO series. Like, it's actually the case where the grass is starting to look greener outside of short distance racing for the first time in a long time. Like, I think a lot of people have always, World Triathlon is it's a bit whatever, but it's World Triathlon, and I think we're seeing this moment. I saw Mark Allen refer to this as the richest year in the history of the sport.
Yeah. As
Yeah,
soon
if
as
you,
people start seeing a really high quality living being on offer in things outside the WTCS and outside that Olympic program, then you will start to see a leak, a migration of athletes over to where they can earn a load of money. I mean,
no,
look at football, for example. There's a huge amount of money in not playing Olympic football. You know, it's not
boxing,
about that.
boxing as
Yeah,
well.
boxing, cycling. Cycling is a very good example where it's the team structure and the world tour structure that pays the bills, whereas the Olympics comes around every 4 years. And yeah, it matters to a cyclist getting an Olympic medal, but it's nowhere near as important as earning a living, winning Paris-Roubaix, winning the Tour de France, winning a monument, whatever.
Well, it was Christian Blumenfeld who said it, and I don't know if he said it on the podcast or if he said it to us in person. I think he said on one of the interviews we did with him. He was saying that he got more of a reaction or more exposure or more, what's the word? Like interest after he broke that Ironman world record in Cozumel than he did after winning the gold medal. And I'm thinking, fucking hell. Like, obviously it was a weird COVID year or whatever, but that's pretty concerning. But no, look, so again, the point I was trying to make is I think we probably will at some point in the very near future. Like World Triathlon, as much as they are, they get their money from the IOC and they're doing their own thing. They're not immune from it, right? If their triathlon love really does start to drop and they can't continue to find sponsors for their events, at some point they're going to be going, what's going on here? Like, I think it is inevitable. They don't want it. They're not
Do
going
you
to admit it.
think, do you think Christian's comment comes down to the way the sport is, in the fact that it's very participation led, and winning an Ironman gets a huge amount more interest from sponsors being able to sell things than winning a Olympic gold medal.
Yeah, definitely. And again,
Mm.
that's the problem is that we haven't built a product yet that makes it not sustainable outside of participation. It's why fucking every goddamn time. And this is like my biggest pet peeve with triathletes. And again, I know some of you listening right now don't I get it. I understand your point of view. But this like I've had that many online arguments, not for arguments with people being like it's all about the age grouper. And yes, I understand like you doing the sport is really important. And I'm an age group myself. I find a lot of, joy in my own personal pursuits. But this, like, it's all about the amateur is the reason why we're still in this position. And it cannot continue to be. And, series like World WTCS and Super League are kind of the only guys who do it's not about the age group. We don't actually give a fuck about the age group. Like we are not interested at all, actually. Like there's not even like even the T100, they've got the age group element, which like we need to see these guys succeed because, like I said, as much as the T100 series is great and it's doing these things for the sport, there's still this huge age group element. So if it is successful, it's still sort of linked. Super League doesn't have an age group race, has the corporate thing. World Triathlon doesn't have an age group race. Sometimes has something, but not the
So
same.
Super League let go of the age group element completely because they used to be, didn't they? They used to be the sort of,
Little corporate things, I think, and then some of the
yeah, they
events.
still do the corporate relay, I suppose.
I don't know. I didn't see it in London. All I saw in London
No.
was a kids event, and in Malibu, I mean, it was the Malibu Triathlon, but that wasn't the Super League course or anything.
Mm.
So I don't think they do. I mean, they don't do. I did the Ottawa race when they had that as a qualifier. They don't do that anymore. So I think so. Uh, but where are we going? Basically, say no.
Me and you, mate, we're going to be the head of the WTCS, aren't we? And
Yeah, no.
revolutionize
I,
world triathlon.
that's the thing. I think that there is going to come a time where they're going to have to start making some changes, and I think for it to work is there needs to be at a base level, it needs to be easy to follow. Like they need to understand that it is not just about the governance and all that bullshit. It is actually about people following the sport of triathlon. That's the first thing. The 20 people allows you to do that because it's suddenly very easy to go, okay, it's these 20. Much like the T100 thing is. I'm not going, who is James L. Balo from Timbuktu racing, ranked 78th in the world racing for, whatever, doing some, like, you don't have to worry about that factor because it's Hayden Wild, it's Alex Yee, it's Tyler Mislachuk, it's Max Stapley, it's Dan Dixon. I'm just naming names that come off the top of my head.
Yeah, and then
Pierre
you've got layered from that. You've got your sort of World Cup events, and all these events which will fill up with the
correct.
rest of the athletes all competing for those spots in that top 20, top tier Premier League race.
Well, that's the other thing, right? Because what we've seen last year is that I guess the line between again, for people who maybe don't follow, you've got World Triathlon Championship Series, the top Premier League, World Cup. What's the championship? The first division? That's the one under the Premier
Yeah,
League.
championship. Yeah,
And then below that, you've got like your continental events, your sort of your Conti Cups,
yeah,
things like that.
which would be League One.
Yeah, but last year, you look, the World Cup fields were just as strong. Like there was no weak
Mm.
World Cup field, so you had this sort of like there wasn't that big a difference. And I think that again, let's say we go top 20. Let's say it's a top because again, simplify the whole thing. At the end of each season, your top 20 athletes are offered a spot to race, and it doesn't matter. It's not a quota per country. Countries need to work harder and put more money into the athletes, not their bureaucracy, to get their athletes into the top 20 to get a WTCS. Then you've got 20 to say 50, 20 to 80. I don't know what the next thing is. That's your World Cup fields. They are televised, but they're not the Premier League, right? So it doesn't matter. You can have bigger fields. You can have courses that aren't as built for broadcast as possible. Still broadcast some. I mean, better than shaky cam like we had in New Plymouth, please. And then below that, maybe you have the 80 and above. And that's the European Cups, that's the Oceania Cups, that's the continental events. And then you literally have a relegation system. So the top 20, maybe I said top 20 before, but maybe it's the top 15 or top 10 automatically get their contract or spot for the next season. Bottom 10, maybe the bottom 10 and the top 10 from the next have to go and do a race to earn the top 10 contracts. Maybe there's some sort of like a repechage or something that's broadcast.
That would be
And
cool.
we've said it. You've got all these things, right? Jeopardy. There's suddenly a narrative beyond just the racing. It's like fucking hell, that if Max Stapley, finishes this race, he suddenly makes the top three in the World Cup standings, which means he's eligible for a World Triathlon Championship Series start next year. Fuck, and so you suddenly like really motivated. Similarly, Alex C's had a shocker. He's at risk of relegation. The best short course athlete
Yeah.
at the moment. He could go down. We could see a whole season without Alex C, and there'd be repercussions for the people like the bureaucracy behind them because there's 10. It's not just your rankings. You just go through. No. If you don't, you lose your spot. Fucking hell! Like this is what I'm talking about. And then you've got a clear
Yeah.
pathway development.
And that Premier League series would have a really slick website, much like we're seeing from the T100, because at the moment, means of communication strategy from the WTCS out to the people, the website ain't that good.
No.
Things like that. It's confusing, it's convoluted, it looks like something from the 90s. So update that. Give that Premier League its own slick ass website with a constantly updated leaderboard and an understanding of who's racing what and when.
I mean, I've said it a million times. Open up the commercialization. Like, really, just get rid of the national kits. Or you can still have the national kits, but let them do what they want with sponsorship. Let them actually embrace technology. Maybe it is a case that, yeah, those short course suits are what they wear, but maybe the sleeves are better. So they're like, I don't know, open it up. Like, open it up to development, open it up to actually make it, more, stop restricting everything, right? Stop being so, we need to conform. We need to, it has to be vanilla. And then as part of this, make the Olympic qualifications easier. I'm so sick of the discussions about the discretionary slots for the Olympics. If basically each country earns its number of medals or positions at the Olympics based on last performance. So if you're, top, if you get two people on top, whatever, you get 3 slots next time. That's done. And then at the end of the season before the Olympics, the top 3 athletes for each country get this. Just simple. Everybody needs to know what it is. Line in the sand, not this moving goddamn line of what you need to do to achieve it. There's too much discretion. There's too much politics. There's too much bullshit that happens behind the scenes.
Yeah, agreed. Agreed. Every yeah. It should be a standard set of rules that everyone can understand. And then you've got these athletes that know what they're aiming for. They know what they need to achieve. They can then go and look and target that and try and achieve it. And they know whether they're going to do it or not, whether they are doing it or not. I mean,
Because look, we said it like 2 weeks ago. We are so excited about this T100 series.
oh, yeah,
The
pumped
only
for it.
the only hesitation I have is it's still a long experience. Like, it's still a 3-hour race, and
Mm.
suddenly we're looking at 8 of them. And yeah, like, I love triathlon, like more probably than most people. I'm probably not going to be able to watch every one of those with time zones and stuff like that. And it'll probably become a thing that I end up watching on the trainer, or I never watched Singapore race last year. I was there at the event. I've not watched it to this. I still not watched it. The good thing, like, I still think short course racing is the best shot we have at a broadcast package is short course. It's
Digestible.
it's not just like, and again, I'm gonna get hate. I always do. The obsession with non-drafting. I get it for age. I understand, right? From a broadcasting, I don't think it's the way. And people say, oh, it makes it boring. It's a swim, blow dry run. Fuck off. Like, the biking they do in those packs is ridiculous. I just think that you see races closer. You watch a long distance race, and it's just like bang, 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 and then they get off and the gaps blow out really, really quickly. You watch a World Triathlon event, they get off in a pack, and the run is a pack. There's people, there's attacks. So yeah, I think that World Triathlon has sort of rested on their laurels for too long, and if they actually really were committed to trying to make the change, they would have the potential to do something really, really good here. And again, Super League's great. It's a bit gimmicky. It's really super short, fast, exciting. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about, like I said, the Premier League, right? You've got Test cricket, you've got one-day cricket, you've got T20. They've all got their place. I think the World Triathlon really could, by limiting the field to 20, sharpening up things, getting off their high horse, and understanding that they're not impervious to this shit, and understand the Olympics isn't, like, if they don't do something about this, like, as much as they're responsible for the triathlon becoming an Olympic sport, they are also currently responsible for its potential demise, because I'm not sure if you're picking up this, but interest in short course triathlon is diminishing rapidly.
It's waning. It's waning,
Rapidly.
and with that in waning in interest, it's a compounding factor because as the interest wanes, the sponsors then are less interested in looking after the athletes that do it. So the athletes that do it don't have the ability to support themselves in life. So they get less interested in doing it and they start looking elsewhere for where they can make money. And the whole thing compounds and becomes worse and worse and worse. what you need for a sport to survive is interest in it from your audience for a start, but also people that are going to participate in it. Because if you haven't got that, then you haven't got a sport. You've just got a thing that happens because it's in the Olympics.
Well, I mean, we can only speak from our experience, but like we see when we do interviews, if we have a short distance athlete versus a long
Yeah.
distance athlete, the difference in downloads is
Oh,
ridiculous.
it's night and fucking day,
Like,
isn't it?
like it's so.
Unless there's a real interesting story or a reason, or
Mm,
that athlete is dipping their toe in both long and short. If we go down the interviewing a short course athlete road, we will see a noticeable dip in downloads for that
yeah.
week.
And I think that's only again compounder, right? Like we are but a small sort of segment of the sport and people that follow it. And we do talk a lot about short course, but so the fact that our audience also is like, I actually don't fucking want to listen to, you know, we're not naming names, that there's been an athlete that we've been trying to get on, and it's just been, and I just said, don't bother, mate. Like, actually, it's not. To be honest, they're a short course athlete. They're not going to move the needle. It's not worth the hassle. Like, we'll find someone else because I just, right? And again, I think it's wrong because the biggest names in short course, the people that want, like, you're right, they dip their toe in. Hayden Wild, biggest name in short course at the moment, did that incredible 70. He's going to win 70.3 worlds this year. Like it's yeah. I just fucking want to shake World Triathlon. Like
Yeah, yeah.
people think we're just
Yeah,
being
the only
vicious for the
time
sake of
we
it.
we really we really move the needle with the short course athlete is when they're also a long course athlete at the same time, or they've got a really interesting narrative. Taylor Knibb, for example, that was a big download week.
Yeah. I just this comes from a place of care, right? Like we're not doing this to be assholes. We don't pick on World Triathlon because we love it. It's like I get so frustrated because you see the potential. You know how good this thing could be if they just fucking accepted that they're not perfect. And yeah, so I think Alistair Brownlee's suggestion, a long way of sort of coming back to this. Yeah, I think
Yeah,
20
man.
I think 20 would be good. I think clearer understanding of the points, clear maybe we go back to a single day world title and the rest is a series. I don't know about that's another whole discussion. But I
He
no,
has the ability to get people to listen, and that's what's exciting about making comments like that. Because a personality like Alistair Brownlee isn't afraid to say what he thinks either.
I wonder actually that could be because I know that he doesn't love to come on podcasts and talk about training and stuff. Maybe that's what you get him on to talk about is the actual structure of the sport. Maybe okay, we should reach out to Ali because I'd love to have that conversation with him about the structure of actual like basically that exact point. I'd love to get his insight because he's a member of the
Yeah.
board of the PTO. He's obviously quite involved with British Triathlon, all that sort of stuff. So I think, and again, just a very very smart guy. Yeah, maybe we should try that. See if we can have any luck with that. What else, mate? That's put to one side. What are we going to move on to next? What are we going to rant about next?
Yeah, yeah. Well, let's not rant about anything. We've got um the men's start list has been announced for WTCS Abu Dhabi. We got
Okay.
we got a fairly strong start list on that. Basically all the big players, all the big names are going to be there. That is in March, I think, that race, isn't it? So
hmm
the triathlon season tends to mirror the Formula One season in terms of where it runs to and from.
hmm
Um, but it's like we were saying to carry on the conversation a minute ago. It's difficult to get excited about that season this year. I think the Olympics are going to be our focus, so we're gonna see the WTCS series play out. But do you think, rather than go through the race and the start list, do you think we're going to see a real fight for the WTCS title this year? Or do you think we're going to see people who aren't focusing on the Olympics and then jumping onto Kona, sort of like almost like a B tier fight?
It's it, and how I'm going to answer this isn't, and it is sort of linking back to what we said. But I think back to 2021 when we had the series, and the athlete I think of is Maya Kingma. Maya had this breakout series. She podiumed in Yokohama. She won leads. And we're thinking, fucking hell, like, this could be Maya's year. And Flora Duffy wasn't really a factor. She obviously won the Olympics, incredible, but sort of was just coming back, focusing on the Olympics. Next minute, because they made the Olympics one of the WTCS events, which I don't know if they're doing this year or not. But suddenly it was like at the end of the season, oh, Christian and Flora win the series. And you go, what this doesn't seem, what? Like, these guys hadn't really featured the whole lead up, win the Olympics, and it was all over. And I remember just going, doesn't why do we have a series? Why didn't we just have these couple of races after? And I wonder, I know for a fact that there are certain athletes who are targeting WTCS. They want that world title as well as the Olympics. But it does almost feel like it's a non-event really until the Olympics, and then we'll see people sort of focus on it. Because again, what I want to start on, just ask you if you've got the start list there, is Gustav Iden on it?
Oof, bear with me a second. At the moment, the Alexei Vasquez Vilasa,
Vincent Louis?
Hayden Wild, it's in an article. Christian
Yep.
Blumenfeld, Gustav Eden, as he leads a small Norwegian team with no Gustav Eden on the start list.
What the fuck is Gustav doing?
Yeah, who knows what Gustav's up to at the moment?
See, honestly, where? Oh, also, just speaking of Christian, I'm sorry, Christian, you're right. KDX are very, very sexy bikes, and I'm sorry. And I am also extremely sorry that I always forget to mention your WTCS title. Ladies and gentlemen, I said it before,
Yeah.
I'll say it again. Christian Blumenfeld, your 2021 World Triathlon Championship Series world champion. What a season he had in 2021. Won the Olympics, won the WTCS, broke the world record in Cozumel. The man, the ultimate man. Women want him, men want to be him. Christian Blumenfeld, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, because I got a text message after last week's show saying, why does Tim always drop mentioning my WCCS title? And KDX is not an ugly bike. It's the best bike in performance and aesthetics.
Christian, the reality is that in the incredible presence of all of your achievements, I often forget the WTCS because the shine from everything else is so bright that it's often forgotten because it pales in it, but not really. I will make sure to always mention you WTCS world title. To the point of this though, I think what we're seeing is nobody really cares about these races because all we know is everybody is playing chess, 4D chess, about the Olympics. You know that Yokohama's not going to have the biggest field because a lot of the athletes are not going to want to travel all the way to Yokohama for a race when they're going to be able to go to Cagliari instead. I know, for example, the British team, Cagliari is their big event, even though I think it's too fucking close to the Olympics. I think it's stupid. But yeah, we're literally in this weird holding pattern at the start of the year where it is 40 chess. And again, talk about trying to grow the sport and the commercialization of the sport stuff when your main series has become second fiddle to one race. Like it just shows the problem. It just shows the fundamental problem where you know that the fields aren't going to be like they're not going to be racing 100%. They're going to be using it as training or testing or seeing where things are at. Like again, let's just imagine that F1 where you're so excited about the F1 season starting, be like, oh well, I know that Lewis Hamilton is only really going to test things out. It's bizarre to me. So my excitement for WTCS is pretty low pre-Olympics because you know that it is this 4D chess game happening. Post-Olympics, it's a fucking free-for-all. But I also am not sure if we're going to see everybody then go, again, Taylor Spivey, Taylor Nibb, Martin Ben Reel. We're going to see these guys start to do more T100s. I have so many short course athletes talking to me about trying to get wild cards for that T100
Yeah.
series.
Yeah, yeah. I know what you mean. I've had many messages as well. Talking about the T100 series,
Yes.
do you think we are seeing the dedicated focus to that series that series would hope for and be expecting from the athletes who have contracted to race a newly launched shiny T100 series?
James Bell, whatever gave you the impression that I wasn't that impressed by this? Almost like we discussed it before we hit record. No, this is another thing that I've seen a lot in the last few weeks online in particular. I think it seems like every second article, Try 24/7 at the moment, best in the business have been putting out, has been about how ex-athlete is doing the T100 series to build up to Kona, or the main goal for the season is Kona, and they're going to use the T100 series as a preparation for it. And I actually responded to one of their comments. I think it was about Clement Mignon saying he's doing the T100, but the main goal is Kona. And I'm like, at least pretend like the T100 series is your focus, because again, I verbalized this a few weeks ago. I do find it concerning that you've got all these athletes who have been paid good money to race the T100 series, and then like it just feels weird to me that the T100 series is great. I'm getting paid. I'm going to do it. It's not my main focus. Like, I think that is a fundamental, like, surely the PR guys and Tom and Anthony, I know you guys listen, just fucking like shut up, guys. At least
Yeah.
pretend like the T100 series is your main goal because it
You'd think it would
really,
be in the contract somewhere if you're gonna you just don't yeah, it's a strange one. Because if I it's an athlete owned organization. They're trying to promote this series as the best of the best racing in triathlon. If athletes are out there saying, well, yeah, I'm going to do these races, but my main focus is Kona, Kona will always have that shine to it.
Mm.
It'll always have, if you win Kona, you're the Ironman world champion. You don't need to say it's your focus. Do you know what I mean? From a marketing yourself perspective, from trying to look like you are. I mean, I suppose if there's a worry that if you don't say Kona's your focus, then you go to these T100 races, you're not performing. Maybe that's doing you some damage. And if you're getting ahead of it by saying, well, actually, I'm going to be training throughout the season. Kona is going to be the big race where I'm going to come out. It's my coming out party. Maybe
Don't get
that's
a
the concern.
fucking contract then. Don't be
Yeah.
paid to fucking race the series if you're using it as a training thing to prepare for Kona. Fuck off. Like that's
Yeah.
exactly my problem, mate. That's why I am ranting now, is because I don't want to see that. I don't want to see people who are in this series that's meant to be the fucking thing that's going to make the sport fucking great and go, oh, but they're just training through it. Oh, we've got, 3/4 of the field are actually focused on Kona. So they're going to do it. Oh, they'll give it a go, but they're really focusing on Kona. And again, you look at, I can't remember who it was who said it, but it's like, well, we now know they're not going to do Ibiza. They're not going to do Vegas because they're focusing. So it's like, well, okay, straight away, we know those races aren't going to be as great. So do they get the same attention, the same focus? No.
Yeah.
Like it's
Yeah. Yeah.
already, it's surely, sure, again, and you've made the point. It is athlete owned. It is athlete owned, which means it is in their best interest for this thing to work. Because if it does, they get more, they own it. They fucking own it, right? It'd be like being sponsored by a bike company and having equity in the company, but promoting another bike brand.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
stupid to me.
It's very much you think in being their best interest to just toe the line.
Fucking oath.
T100 is the series, it's the bollocks, it's the thing I'm aiming for. Yes, I am going to race Kona because, I race Kona every year because it's a big race for me. It's a big race for my sponsors. But the T100 series is where my emphasis and efforts are going to be because I want this sport to succeed. I want to have the best broadcast sport in the world. And I feel that the T100 series is the future of triathlon.
Do you
There
think
you
it
go.
is?
It's written a statement for you.
That's what it should. We're not pro athletes, man, and we know this should be the thing, right? Like, do you think? Hey, I don't know. And guys, not. Do you think that they've told the athletes to do this and the athletes have just ignored it, or do you think it's because what we also hear is a lot since the Ironman, and we've seen Sam say this in interviews and things. It's like, no, no, we think it's great what Ironman is doing, and we want to make sure that we're open and we want to support. Do you think that's what it is, or do you think they have had that conversation? Like, listen, guys, stop fucking talking about Ironman every time you talk. Like, surely, surely they've said to their contracted athletes, because it's not everyone. Not everyone's coming out saying, like, some athletes are coming out saying, fuck the world champs, like Lucy Charles, and she copped shit for it. Maybe that's it too. Maybe people have seen the negative reaction to Lucy Charles and gone, oh, I don't
Yeah,
want to.
maybe. I mean, I thought the negative reaction she got was downright disrespectful and out of order, if I'm honest.
100% fucking stupid,
Yeah.
fucking ridiculous. I'm swearing a lot this week. I know we're gonna get messages.
Yeah.
People don't like
No,
it.
you're all good. I mean, yeah, I think possibly. I mean, look, I think we're in a transitional period on working on the assumption that the T100 series does work. So we're in that. We're going to have a conversation that the T100 series is just going to get better and better and better and take off, and it's going to become the pinnacle of the sport. Working on that assumption, then right now we're in a transitional period.
Yep.
We're in a period where we've got a load of athletes who aren't used to that and who are still used to having to fight for scraps and are still very self-focused. It's an individual sport. You train a lot on your own, you and your coach, or you coach yourself. And we've also still got this sport where there are some athletes in it who are racing as professionals who, if the sport was really dialed in, probably wouldn't be at the peak of a sport where you had to be the best swimmer, biker, and runner. We see people who are not quite as good as swimmers but who make up for it by sort of putting a band-aid on it with a really strong bike and a really strong run. At some point, this sport is going to get to a level where you have to be fucking good at swimming, biking, running, transitioning, and marketing yourself. All that thing is going to be really important. But right now, we're in this transitional period where there are hangovers of the past. And when that T100 series does take off and becomes a pinnacle, and in a few years' time, we're going to see an evolution of this sport because we're starting to see it. We're starting to see short course athletes come through. We're starting to see people who can dip in and out of both distances and really professionalize the upper echelons of the long course.
How long until or when do you think we will see athletes say, I'm actually not going to race Kona? When will the T100 series be enough? What will it take?
Money.
It's one thing they don't seem to have a lack of, it seems.
Yeah. But like it'll take more money than you get from the sponsors within the sport.
I would say that
It'll
I would say that a few of those athletes are getting more money. If the rumors are
Yeah, yeah,
true, I'd say they are.
they are. But what I'm saying is to ripple down through that whole field, it'll take a consistent belief that over the long period, over the long term, the T100 is going to be there still, and you are going to get a career's worth of money from this series, enough that you don't have to work again. Let's say you've retired from a triathlon, you've bought your house, you've got your family, you settled down, or whatever you do in life, and you've had your career, and that as career has earned you enough money to live. That is the point where small little sponsors within the sport aren't going to have any power anymore. And it's not going to matter that it's a participation thing and you've got to sell some shoes, or you're going to sell a bike frame, or you're going to sell some wetsuits when you go to, if you've got to go to Kona, because that's where all of our market watches you race. When you're getting sponsorship in from outside the sport and you can get a lifetime's worth of earnings from this one series, that's when people will turn around and say, yes, Kona's not important to me anymore because I don't need sponsorship from the wetsuit company.
I've
Thank you.
just spoken a lot about with World Triathlon in particular about needing to have clear lines in the sand. It needs to be this is what you need to do to earn a spot. I've just gone on about it a lot. And I'm about to sort of flip around on that a lot because I think, again, looking at the T100 series, it's relatively clear. The top 16 got contracts, dates and stuff. I'm not 100% sure on, but the majority is it's based on ranking. If you're ranked in these spots, you get the spot. Do you think maybe there should be a bit more discretion where they can say, well, yeah, you're in the top 10, but you keep talking about fucking Kona. You're out, mate. Like, do you think there should be some sort of, I don't know, repercussions for these athletes? I mean, I'm sure they don't do it intentionally. I'm sure that if that PJ is like, hey, mate, look, shh, just shush, they would. But I don't know. Do you think on the other side, maybe this is why we need a bit more discretion? I don't know. Again, I'm just hypothesizing now.
I don't know. Um, I think right now the PTO have created as a race series that has to be welcoming and a warm embrace for the athletes that exist in the sport. Otherwise, they're not going to get those names racing their series. And with that comes a degree of flexibility, probably because they are not as yet in a position to dictate terms.
I was having a really interesting conversation with somebody much, much smarter than me this week because I've got this idea.
Was it me?
Wasn't you? You're also much smarter
No.
than me. Uh, I have this thought that just keeps rattling around in my head, and I've spoken at this idea of like a Tour de France style long distance. We're talking about, and we're talking, what sort of level of investment would it take to get this off the ground? And what she said was, problem triathlon has is the talent pool isn't big enough. She said, look at it at the moment. You've currently got PTO, Ironman, Challenge, WTCS, and Super League, and there's not enough athletes to sustain them all. Currently, we have to have athletes who are doing multiple WTCS and Super League, T100, Ironman. You don't have a big enough pool of talent that you have the athletes who do T100, the athletes who do Ironman, the athletes who do, and it's never something that I'd thought about because we think of this sport as, you know, big, too many pros in a lot of ways. But even currently with this new, we don't have enough talented athletes to fill them independent of each other.
Mm,
And
that's true.
is it that we don't, is it that we don't have enough talent, or is it that the talent isn't good enough? And I'm not trying to be overly harsh here, but is it that we actually don't have enough world class because of the inability to earn a proper income from the sport?
Yeah, I think that's probably it. It doesn't go deep enough
Yeah.
because and that's why we've been disappointed so many times over the years with athletes getting injured when we think there's going to be a big race coming up and people are racing so much they end up with an injury. I keep thinking about something you said about the WTCS earlier, and like, and also couple that with what I just said about there's going to come a time where you have to be the very best at swim, bike, and run. And in WTCS, that's an example of where they are
Mm.
some of the best at swim, bike, and run. You can't be a poor swimmer in the WTCS and win a race. You don't have to be at the front of the bike pack to win a race, but you certainly can't be a bad biker. and you certainly can't be a bad runner. Imagine if the WTCS had really interesting races where one week, like you say, it could be non-drafting. They have a this week we got a non-drafting race,
Mm.
or this week we've got a swim time trial on a Saturday and then a duathlon on a Sunday, or a bike time trial on the Saturday and then a swim run on the Sunday. Break it up, make it interesting, make the dynamic really quite enthralling. One week you play to your strengths as a biker, and the next week you play to your strengths as a swimmer. I think that would be quite an interesting. Anyway, I've gone back through the
No,
in time podcast a little bit, but I've just been stewing on that.
well, because it's the next thing that I want to talk about, because you did make that comment, and it is in relation to the Sam Long video that we saw that I'm going to talk about next. But on that, because I think people probably listening go, what are you talking about? There's not bad swimmers. Look at some of the bad swimmers in the sport. And I love you, Hayden, but you're the sort of obvious example of somebody who's not the best swimmer, okay? But objectively, Hayden Wilde is a very good swimmer. We saw that when he went and did Melbourne 70.3 last year, and yes, the swim was shortened, he let out the fucking water, mate. I think that
Yeah,
to think that there is no short course athlete with an obvious deficit. Even the weaker cyclists who people say, oh, but they're not going to do well at non-drafting, they're still exceptional cycle. Like they are such
yeah.
well-rounded athletes, and you don't see athletes who have a weakness succeed. They drop off. They end up
No, I
going
mean Hayden's a great example of a swimmer who, within the context of that series, is regarded as a poor swimmer. Put him in the long course, he's a fucking shit hot swimmer.
front pack
Because
swimmer.
the difference, the percentage difference in that series is so much smaller than it is in the long course. You take a bad swimmer in the long course, they are some way behind.
Again, Cam Worth, legend of a
But
man.
Cam Worth, yeah, Cam
But I
Worth is
st
the man, isn't
I
he?
still remember that. I still remember that meme. It's probably the best piece of triathlon meme content I've ever seen ever. And it was footage of when Cam did that World Cup race, and it was like some guy 100 meters ahead of him in the water, and it was like 150th ranked in the world WTCS. Cam Worth, fifth place at the IronMan World Championships. Like, yeah, it shows
And I
that
love him for doing that. I love him for doing that. I love him for exposing himself like that because it was cool as fuck and good on him. I got nothing but respect for Cam Worth. He is such an athlete.
fuck, I actually just he did a really long interview with Rich Roll last year, and I've been listening to it recently. And he again, we actually need to get Cam back on. He's fantastic. Uh, but let's move because that we touched on it, right? Is that Sam Long video where he was talking a lot about the T100 series and how it actually meant the world to him because it's given him the financial independence to focus on what he really wants to focus on, which is short course. And he was saying that he wasn't able to when he was starting out because there wasn't a pathway or a progression for him to take. It meant that he had to, what did he say, done 22 Ironmans or something, and he had to because he had to get enough sponsorship to be able to be in a position where he can now focus. And it also then ties in with we had a comment on our YouTube about the interview with Rico Borgen last week saying, are we going to see a point where the Uber bike runners are made irrelevant because the swim has moved on so much? And I think the two kind of link because Sam is a terrible swimmer. And to say there is no progression, like there is, it's called short course. And that's sort of what we've been touching on, right? Is that if you are a true triathlete, swim bike runner, you will go through the federation to a point, and then you probably will move over. But yeah, do you think that? Because I think the answer is it's already happened. I think the age of the bike runner is sort of it's ending. You look at Magnus being the example. Magnus, who's again considered not the strongest swimmer, his best performance has been when he had that good swim at Roth, and he is always not minutes and minutes back. What do you think? Do you think we're at a point where the age of the bike runner is over? Do you think? I mean, I think I know what the answer is, but what do you think it's going to
Yeah,
take?
100%. I think we're getting there. And I think in the next few years, it will just get more and more highlighted to us that I think as long as this sport continues to grow and thrive, I think we will see a dialing in of the abilities of the swim, the bike, and the run to a point where they are some of the best swimmers, bikers, and runners in the world. Now, we already are there with the WTCS. With the long course, we are still, it's still evolving, I think, to that point. And I think the T100 series will help that if the level of investment they want comes through and you start seeing because money drives everything in sport. And if you start seeing people being able to earn a real proper life defining amount of money from being a professional within a sport, that's when you start to see the real focus and the real emphasis on being the best of the best of the best. And we've got some of that already in the sport. Don't take my words wrong. We've got some of the best of the best of the best at the very pointy end of the long course. But those gaps get bigger and bigger as you go down through the field. And what
Well,
we want to see is really tight racing for the top 10, 20.
I do think we are seeing that like there's still place at the moment for the bike runners to be successful in the sport. But that's in races where there's not a really good swimmer in the field. Because I think that every time you drop in one of those super swimmers, like, and again, I'm not, I think Sam's fantastic, but I look at Sam Long, where he had an interesting year last year. And we went into, what was it, that India Worlds race at the end of last year. And he had Sam, and I think Lionel was there. Was Lionel? I can't remember if Lionel. Sam was there. I don't know if Lionel was there. But you would have sort of, I think a lot of the expectation was Sam Long was going to, you know, bike run his way to the front. And he didn't. The Norwegian guys at the front, dropped that super swim, and I think Sam came close, but he didn't close the gap. Then we go to the Peru race. Was it Peru? Whatever the race was, Chile at the start of this year that he won Pucon, I think it was. There was no super swimmer, and he's able to do it. So I think that there is still a place for it. The T100 series, there's going to be no place. There's going to be
Yeah.
no place for this. I think I would be very surprised, especially with how the swim is technically longer than like the percentage compared to a regular
Yeah, yeah.
70.3. The swim
Totally.
is
The
longer.
ratio is longer.
I think I would expect us to see it's going to take it's going to take a lot of work, I think, from those guys who aren't going to be able to swim with that front pack to sort of feature. I think, yeah, I am thinking that those sort of days are behind us. Ironman, not so much. I don't think the swim is important at Ironman, just because the times are so long, and 180-kilometer bike. It's not necessarily about who's the strongest bike. It's who's able to hold aero position the longest, who has that that engine, who is able to then run a hard. Like, I think it's probably, of anywhere, it's the least relevant at Ironman. It's still relevant, right? We saw Sam Laidlow in that, his last two World Championships, where he's a front pack swimmer, goes on bikes and won the thing in Nice. But I don't think it's as relevant in Ironman yet. But I think for the middle distance is basically becoming WTCS to me, where you have to be an
Yeah.
extremely well bound at the races that count. If you are not an exceptional swim bike runner, you're going to be left wanting pretty quickly, I think. Which isn't a bad thing, which is what it should be. It's triathlon.
So do you think an athlete like Sam Long is 10 years too late?
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, I do. I think, like, we know that him, and he's working on his swim, and I hope he gets it right, because he's so goddamn good at the bike and run. Yeah, I just wonder if it's, I don't know. Like I said, you look at the little things you're curious to see. I am curious to see how Sam Long features in this T100 series, because Sam is such a character, and you know that he's going to feature in the market and the promotion stuff. But is he going to feature at the race? Because you can be the biggest name in the sport, and you might not, like Joe Skipper, right? Love you, Joe.
Have you still got that pair of Speedos with his name written on them?
They're not speeders, they're jammers, and yes, I do.
Oh, okay.
Well,
Yeah.
they're at the bottom of the drop. But like Joe, do you remember that Joe raced Roth last year? Had his best ever result at Roth? Didn't
Yeah.
really, but there wasn't
I
that
mean,
much
yeah,
hype
I
around it, right?
do, but yeah.
You
No,
know what
no,
I
I know what
mean?
you mean.
And Joe's one of
Yeah,
the
yeah.
great characters, but he was sort of pushed to the side. And when I worry if that's going to happen to some of those names, is a Sam Long going to just become a passenger of the T100 series? And yes, he gets his money. In the long run, though, is it going to actually do him more harm, because he's not going to get the exposure? And suddenly it's like, well, yeah, you did the T100, but we never saw you. You were never on the broadcast. Like, you weren't talked about. You just sort of, I guess that's my concern a little bit, but I guess we'll see.
We will see indeed. It's going to be exciting, mate. I'm really looking forward to some of we get into that, some actual proper racing this season that we got to talk about,
It's
because
soon.
you know, we do a lot of critiquing the sport. We do a lot of critiquing the format of it, the systems, the setup, but it's really exciting to get excited about some races, and I'm looking forward to that.
We also have got that first T100 series coming, and we need to work out, because we have been having some offline conversations about things we want to do a little bit around those races, probably with our patrons and stuff. But we've been discussing maybe doing like live watch alongs or live alternate commentaries for our patrons or something like that. So we are thinking of some ideas. It'll just depend on timing and time zones and stuff like that. But that first race is less than a month away. I am
Yeah.
I am excited to see what we get. Is it going to be Is it going to be
Miami, 9th of March. And Miami is 6 hours behind me. So the racing will start at some point.
exactly? This isn't an on-air thing. It'll take us 10 minutes to work it out. Jimbo, if people want to find out other things about talking triathlon, what do they need to do?
Yeah, you need to go to patreon.com/talking triathlon, sign up for the Patreon. With that, you get access to the bonus episodes. We do one of those each month where we talk all kinds of stuff behind the scenes. And you get access to the Facebook group, the socials, and the WhatsApp group. And the WhatsApp group is where it's all happening. The Instagram is, I haven't got the notes in front of me, so I'm winging this.
Talking
The Instagram
triathlon.
is at Talking Triathlon. The Twitter is at Talk Triathlon. Tim is at tford14 on Instagram, and I'm Bale at Bale.James85 on Instagram. So yeah, join the Patreon group because we get all manner of chats. The WhatsApp group is constantly buzzing at the moment. I love it.
And again, if you guys have thoughts, you want to give your opinions, do you think the top 20 athletes at WTCS would work or not? What do you think about this? YouTube. YouTube is the place to put the comments. It's the easiest place to have an open conversation with us about the stuff we discuss on this, or again, through the Patreon. I do always like that we get the immediate feedback. We put the episode out, and then the Patreon group sort of go off with everybody giving their thoughts about what we discussed. I do enjoy that, and again, I appreciate the most of the comments. Most of the comments on YouTube. Sometimes I don't appreciate them so much.
No,
But
I think before we head off as well, I think we need to pay tribute to Kelvin Kipton, who
oh
tragically lost his
yeah,
life in a road traffic accident, and his coach. And best recovery to the third occupant of the car. But what a tragic loss for the world of sport the other day.
that was like truly terrible. He was going to go sub 2 hours in a marathon, and it just shows.
Rotterdam, possibly in Rotterdam. I had a real moment when I woke up and read that. I thought it was some sort of joke,
Yeah,
and it shocked me for the rest of the day. I couldn't stop thinking about it. Like what a void, a vacuum has been left with where that man's career was going to go. It's absolutely shocking.
it's always that thing, right? When you hear about somebody who's like a brain surgeon or a rocket scientist or something that just gets murdered, or it's like what a like the world is a significantly worse place because this person doesn't have the ability to live out and achieve everything they were going to. And I mean, again, in the scheme of things, running is running, but like he was the next Eliud Kipchoge. Like he was going to be the next great thing. And 24 is just
No,
it's
yes,
tragic, and it really shows.
as
Like,
was
yeah. But if
yeah,
you
as
guys are
was
worried
said
about, don't worry about it. Just live every day and get out there. So
yeah, man. As was mentioned in the WhatsApp group, it had echoes of Steve Prefontaine
mm,
dying at 24 with so much more to give.
terrible. Well, again, thoughts to everybody involved in it. Uh, yeah, tragic. What a down note to end this on. But we'll be back next week.
We will indeed, and there's a bonus coming.
There is. We've got to do that. Yeah. We actually we had to record this early because I'm off to Melbourne tomorrow for a day trip for work. But yeah, we'll be back next week. I think you're away next week. You're not going to be on the episode. I'm going to do
I'm not. You've got a guest host, haven't you?
yeah, Max Stapler's going to come on and co-host with me. He's been begging me, and I've had to be like, oh, Max, I'll give you this, man. I'll allow you to come on. I think we're going to talk about the season coming up and get his thoughts, and it's always good fun when Max is on. So I might try to rope Joe on as well. I think it's now that Mockery's back, maybe they're gonna they get everything they want off together. But yeah, we definitely have
A
Max on next week.
ménage à trois.
Yeah, we've also got the CEO of Challenge Families coming on the next few weeks. He wants to have a chat around things. They got a little bit cranky with some of the stuff we said, or I said a
Yeah,
few weeks ago.
you got yourself in trouble, didn't you?
I regret nothing, mate, and I stand by my comments. But yeah,
Tim banned from racing challenge races Ford.
it was a funny week, wasn't it? Where we had a
Oh,
few
Jesus.
Ironman. Sorry, not
Suddenly
Ironman.
everyone was bollocking us. It was
We got it
weird.
from
It
several
was
things.
weird.
It
I
was
was just like, no, stop it, everybody. Leave us alone. We're all right.
yeah, exactly. All right, mate. Talk to you later.
Cheerio.